Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this really pretty stitch. Now it's the same on both sides. It's a really pretty easy stitch. Now it looks like a cluster, but it's got a lot more texture to it than a normal sort of cluster. It's done in a different way. It's not just 3 stitches into the same one. It's into the spaces as well and into the top of the clusters. If you're in the UK, this is a treble crochet stitch, and if you're in the USA or another country, it's a double crochet stitch. It's the same stitch, we just call it different from the USA. Now this is a really nice thick warm stitch. You can use any yarn for it, thin yarn, thick yarn, super chunky, double knitting, Aran, anything you like, and just use the hook size it tells you on your label. So I've not finished mine. I'm making, as you can see, I'm making a little blanket for a Moses basket for my daughter. I don't want to do everything pink, so I've got another ball of yarn for this. I'm using this top value James C. Brett. It's only about £2. Sometimes you can find it even less than that, less than £2 a ball. My sample, I'm going to use this one. This is a 99p ball, less than $1 if you're in the USA. This is called First Choice, and it is very similar to the James C. Brett. Now if I don't show you the labels, you would think this was the same brand. It's the same softness. Now it's really pretty. I think this one is from Home Bargains in the UK. Now it's just a budget yarn, This one is shade 51 and the James C. Brett top value is shade 8431 and it's a lilac. That's really pretty. That's what I'm doing the blanket in. The stitch count for this is an even number. Make it as big as you like. You can make it as big as you like, an even number of stitches. If you leave a tail end on, and by the time you get to the end, if you don't have enough, you can use your tail to add an extra stitch or 2. So don't even worry about the stitch count. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that over there and I'll show you how to do this. It's really quick. So I'm going to do my chain, and we're going to do the chain in an even number. So I'm going to do a slip knot. A slip knot, you just wrap it around your fingers, put your hook in and pull the yarn through and then pull it up. Now if you can't do that, just lay it down, make sure you've got a decent sized tail and just tie it on. Tie it on like that, won't do any harm at all. So I'm going to do my chain. I'm going to do an even number, and don't do your chain too tight. So I've done a small sample of this. I'm going to use this pink to make a bigger blanket as well, to go on that little Moses basket for my daughter. I've done that lilac one and I'm going to do a pink one. So to start this off, we're going to be keeping the stitches on the hook. When we do those clusters, we're going to keep them on the hook. I'm going to show you this. This is the one I'm still working on. Now as you can see, they're actually clusters of stitches. They're sets of 3 clusters. They're not individual clusters like a fan. They're all clustered together, and that's what we're going to do with this. So into the 4th stitch, count 1, 2, 3 and 4. Into the 4th one, that is going to count as a treble crochet. So into the 4th stitch, do a treble crochet but keep it on the hook. Now just for this first stitch, we're going to go into that stitch again and do another one and keep it on the hook. Now go into the next stitch, yarn over and do your treble crochet, but keep it on the hook, and you've got 4 loops. So we've got that chain of 3, we put 2 into that first stitch after it and 1 into the next stitch. We've got 4 loops, yarn over and come through all the 4 loops and chain 1. Now into that same stitch where you used before, into the same stitch, you're going to put a treble crochet. Keep it on the hook, that's 1. Now into the next stitch, do the same. Keep it on the hook, that's 2. And into the next stitch. And keep it on the hook. Now what you've done is you've used a 2 from the chain, and you've used 1 that was used already here. And we've got 4 loops again. So yarn over and through all the 4 loops and chain 1. Now that last stitch, we're going to use that stitch again, and that way we're going to use 2 off the chain. We'll always be using that last stitch twice. We're going to use this stitch twice. So yarn over and into there, treble crochet. If you're in the USA, that's a double crochet. Keep it on the hook, yarn over into the next stitch, keep it on the hook, that's 2 stitches on the hook, yarn over and into the next one, and that's 3 stitches on the hook plus our loop from the other one. Yarn over through them all, chain 1, remember the chain 1. So we've used that stitch and we're going to use it again, that stitch. So yarn over and into that same stitch there and pull through. Keep it on the hook and then use up the next 2 chains. 1 into that one, keep it on the hook, 1 into the next one, keep it on the hook, yarn over through the 4 loops and chain 1. Now down to that stitch and use it again. So use that same stitch again, that one there. Keep it on the hook. Use the next stitch in your chain. Keep it on the hook. And the next stitch in the chain. So you're using 2 stitches from the chain each time. And using the other one twice. So yarn over and through all the loops. Going to chain 1, use that stitch again, it's 1, keep it on your hook, into the next chain, 2, keep it on the hook, and into the next stitch, that's 3, and then yarn over and through them all, and chain 1. So that's the stitch you used, and we're going to use it again. 1 and then 1 from the chain, the next stitch, and then the next stitch in the chain. Yarn over and pull through them all, chain 1. So use that space again, that's 1, 1 from the chain, that's 2, and the next one from the chain, that's 3, yarn over through them all. Do that all the way along. Remember and use that stitch twice. That one there, you've used it before already, use it again to do your first stitch. That's 1, 1 from the chain, and 1 from the next chain. Yarn over and pull through, chain 1, use that space again, there's a stitch there already but use it again. 1, 1 into the next stitch, keep it on your hook, and 1 into the next stitch, keep it on your hook, yarn over and come through them all, and chain 1. So I've done my last cluster, I'm going to chain 1, and I've got one stitch left, and I'm going to put a treble crochet into that last stitch and pull through. Now if you don't have enough stitches left, you can use your tail to make a stitch. Just put it into your last stitch and pull the tail through, and then make extra stitches if you need them. That's why I always leave a longer tail there. And this is what you have. You've got this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the chain spaces twice. We're going to use the chain spaces twice in this next round. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3 and turn. So straight in to the chain space we're going to do a treble crochet and keep it on the hook. Now you can see there's 2 stitches before the space. Now that long stitch is part of that cluster. You're going to go into that little eye, the one that pulled the cluster together. Don't go into that one, you'll add stitches and have the wrong stitch count. You're going into that little eye there, that little eye that holds that cluster together, and keep it on your hook. Then move to the chain space, move into this space and do your third one. So you've got 4 loops, yarn over and pull through them all and chain 1. Into the chain space again with your next stitch. Use the chain space twice. So we're going into the little eye of that stitch, not that one, that's the side of that cluster. If you go into there, you'll only have 2 left in your cluster. Go into that little circle there. So yarn over and into there. That's stitch 2. Then into the chain space for stitch 3. Pick up stitch 3. You've got 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, through them all, chain 1. So into the chain space again, into that space. That's stitch 1, into that little round eye in there, that little round space there, because that's the side of the cluster. Don't go into that, you're going into the top of the cluster and pull through, then into the space, and that's the row you'll keep repeating. So chain 1, into the space, keep your stitch in the hook, into the cluster, into the stitch that holds the cluster together, and then into the next space, pull through, chain 1. So when you've made that chain 1 is what draws your cluster together, and that's what you're going to be using, is that stitch. They're the little stitch, not the big stitch, because the big stitch belongs to the cluster, it's the side of the cluster. So into the chain space, keep it on the hook, into that little eye of that cluster, keep it on the hook, then move over to the chain space, ignore that next stitch, and into the chain space, through all your loops, chain 1. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to repeat that row until your blanket is as big, or your scarf is as big as you want it. So into the space, into the top of the cluster, that little tiny stitch, and then into the next space, and then pull it together and chain 1. Into the space again, the same space, then into the top of the cluster, that little one that's holding those all together, and then into the next space, into the space, pull it together and chain 1. Now when you get to the end, we're going into the space again, into the top of the cluster, and then into this space here at the end where your chain of 3 is. You're going in there to complete your cluster. And that's, you got your 3 stitches and your loop. Yarn over and pull through. You'll still do your chain 1, and then into the top of that chain of 3 you're going to do a treble crochet. That's a double crochet if you're in the USA. It's the same stitch, we just call it different. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3 and turn, and we're going to do all again. Start off in that space there. So you've got your loop on the hook and do your stitch, keep it on the hook. So the second stitch is that tiny little one there that's holding your cluster together there. Into that stitch. And then into the chain space. Don't go into that next stitch, because that next stitch belongs to that cluster. You're going into the space for your third one. So you've got 3 stitches and 1 loop, makes 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over through them all and chain 1. Now into the same space again, then into the top of the cluster, that little stitch. Keep them on your hook, then over to the chain space. That's 3. Yarn over, pull through and chain 1, and that's the rows you'll keep repeating until your blanket or your scarf, whatever you're making, is as big as you want it to be. Just remember to use that space twice. So you've used it for that cluster, and we're going to use it for this one, and go into that little stitch that's holding that slanted cluster together, and then into the chain space. Don't go into that space, go into the big chain space. Pull through, chain 1 and into the space again, into the top of the cluster and into the next space. Pull through and chain 1, and that's what you're going to keep repeating. It's a really pretty stitch, and it's quick as well, and this is what you get. I'm still doing this one. I've run out. I need to add my next ball of yarn to this one, and this is what you get. You get this really pretty cluster pattern. I'm going to lift my, and you get this really pretty pattern, and this one is wide enough to do, I'll tell you how wide this is. This is wide enough for a Moses basket or one of those carices. I've got a Moses basket for my daughter for when she's a baby. So this is 21.5. I would say once it's stretched out nice, once it's washed, it'll be fine. It's like 22 inches. 22 inches is 56 centimeters, and that's how wide this is, and it's really soft. Make it as long as you want. This is really pretty, and it's a really pretty cluster stitch as well. So now you can use any yarn for this and any hook size. It's recommended you use the hook size for the yarn that you've picked. If you want this to be more open, if you want it more open like this, then use a bigger hook. If it tells you, your yarn tells you to use a 4.5, try a 5.5. And if you want a nice small tight in stitch, a little thicker blanket, if your yarn tells you to use a 4.5, then try a 3.5, and that gives you a thicker blanket if that's what you want. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. It's completely free to subscribe to the channel, and if you click on the bell icon, YouTube will tell you when I put up another tutorial. So until the next time, happy crafting, and I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.